you answer a really challenging question like, tell me about a time when you were disappointed in your performance? I'm Dr. Rajani Katta, author of The Successful Match, and we've talked and helped to a lot of applicants to help them through challenging questions like this one. That's why we created our step-by-step approach to all of the common medical school and residency interview questions. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through one example of our step-by-step approach. Here's the video.
Tell me about a time when you were disappointed in your performance. Why would somebody ask this kind of question? Well, this is an example of a behavioral question, and it's been used for a long time in the business world, these types of questions, and they're increasingly being used in medicine because proponents believe that your past behavior is a solid predictor of your future behavior. But questions like this can be tricky because it automatically gives a bit of a negative bent to the question. A time when you were disappointed in your performance. How do you take a challenging question like that and really start to emphasize positive aspects and really make a strong impression on the interviewer? Well, in order to step up your response, you do have to start with an example where you actually were disappointed in your performance. But then the key to this answer is to find an example where you worked to find a way to improve and then to highlight those steps that you took. And then finally, you're going to want to tie it back to your future career. So here's our step-by-step here. Take an inventory of past experiences. Have a soft reminder at the beginning of your response, and I'll give you an example of how to do that. Use a star table to structure your response because for all behavioral interview questions, star tables can be very helpful. And then finally, conclude with lessons learned. So step one is to really just sit and think about your past experiences. So you do want to make an inventory of times when you were personally disappointed in your performance. So you can actually just sit down with pen and paper and start thinking about different types. And then you're going to review your potential options. Now, you're going to have to choose one example from your potential options. So how do you choose among these? Well, the most important factor is that you need to have demonstrated maturity in how you handled the situation. You also want to demonstrate that you developed insight into the causes of your disappointing performance. And it's really important to pick an example where you did ultimately learn a lesson and where you later worked to find solutions or approaches that would really try to ensure that the situation did not occur again. That's really the key to finding a good example. Now, what do I mean by a soft reminder? Whenever you are dealing with potentially negative scenarios, it's always helpful to start with a soft reminder of the positive aspects. So, for example, I might answer this. I was very proud of my work at the Strong Clinic, especially my work in coordinating the volunteers. But there was one incident where I was disappointed in my performance. So you can clearly see that that's a soft reminder where you are used to doing strong work and you have examples of strong work. But there was one incident where I was disappointed in my performance. I mean, of course, we're not all perfect, but it does help to start with that soft reminder. Now, in step 3, we're going to focus in on the STAR approach to behavioral interview questions. This is before we start with the STAR table, whenever you're faced with questions like this, any behavioral interview question, it's not really tell me about a time when you were disappointed. It's tell me about a time when you were disappointed in your performance and how did you work to improve. That last part is not actually verbalized by your interviewer, but it's an incredibly important part of your response. How did you work to improve? So for the STAR table, what that means, it's an acronym that stands for situation, task, action, and result. So in describing the situation, you're essentially just telling a story about the time that this happened. But because you are telling a story, it's really important to include some details and some background. You don't want to be too verbose, of course, but a few details just helps with the memorability of your example. So you're just going to describe the time when you weren't proud of your performance. That's the situation. Now, the task in this situation is defined as what do you do when you're not proud of your performance? Or in this specific case, how did you improve your performance? How do you how do you improve your performance? That is actually a task, and that's what you're actually going to discuss. And this is where you focus on your actions. So you were disappointed in your performance. What actions did you take to deal with that? And what actions did you take to make sure that this would not be repeated? Or what actions did you take to improve for the next time? So you're actually going to describe your actions. And this is an incredibly important part of your response. And then you're going to talk about the results. Because remember, in describing the situation, you were telling a story. It's really important to describe what happened. What were the results in this situation? So the key final endpoint here is to tie it back to your future career. So yes, there was an example of a time you were disappointed. You worked to find a way to improve. And now, what are the lessons learned for your future career? What did you learn from having to deal with this performance? And what did you learn from working to improve? And then, very importantly, how do you plan to apply these lessons to your future career or in your future life? And bonus points if you can discuss how you have already applied these lessons to other situations. So in the example, he's very specific. Note how he did give some very precise details about this time when he was disappointed in his performance, but he focused most of his response on the steps that he took to improve. And then he described the lessons learned, how helpful it was in terms of seeking advice via office hours, the group studying, the collaboration, and then he ties it into his future. So his overall message is coming through very clearly. I was disappointed in my performance. These are the steps I took to improve. Now I've learned some really important lessons and I'm ready to handle medical school. I'm ready to apply these lessons for medical school. So I think if you go back to the original video, you can see how he's working through these different steps in this process and how this has become a really strong, powerful response.
This video was taken from our courses, the Medical School Interview 101 and the Residency Interview 101. If you'd like to learn more about these courses, as well as check out some of our free resources, you can visit us at our website, thesuccessfulmatch.com. I wish you all the best of luck in your interview.